What you eat for breakfast may be affecting your body far more than you think. Before you take another bite of breakfast tomorrow morning, I want you to try something. Look down at whatever you are about to eat. Now imagine what is actually happening inside your body right now at this exact moment before you even finish chewing. Because if that breakfast is oatmeal, whole grain toast, a bowl of cereal, or even a glass of orange juice, there is a very real chance your blood sugar is about to rise faster than if you had eaten a chocolate bar. And the unsettling part is that most people never realize it is happening, but your body does every single morning. And those mornings add up. Day after day, year after year, your body is quietly responding to the first meal of the day in ways most of us were never told about. I am Dr. Megan Foster, and I have spent over 2 decades working with patients struggling with metabolic conditions, including type 2 diabetes and insulin resistance. And in all those years of clinical practice, one pattern has surprised me more than almost anything else. The people trying the hardest to eat healthy are often the ones unknowingly triggering the biggest blood sugar problems every single morning. Not because they are making bad choices, not because they are lazy or uninformed, but because the information most of us were given about what makes a breakfast healthy is seriously, dangerously incomplete. Stay with me through this video because by the end of it, you are going to understand exactly what is happening in your body every morning when you sit down to eat. You will know why the breakfast advice most of us grew up with may have been working against you the whole time. And you will have 5 specific, practical, research backed breakfast strategies that metabolic researchers consistently find produce the most stable, lasting energy throughout the entire morning. The fifth one surprises almost everyone who hears it. So please stay until the end because that is the one that tends to make the biggest difference for people. Let us start with a question that almost nobody stops to ask. Why do so many people who eat a full breakfast, a real breakfast, not just a coffee, still feel mentally foggy, tired, and hungry again before 10 or 11 in the morning? Think back for a moment, maybe 10 years ago, maybe 15 or 20. Back then, did you wake up obsessing about snacks before noon? Did you feel shaky or desperate for a second cup of coffee before the morning was even half over? Did you feel that sharp drop in energy right when you should have been at your most productive? Most people did not feel that way back then. But today, that mid morning crash has become so common that most people just accept it as part of life. You eat breakfast, you feel okay for maybe an hour, and then it hits the foggy thinking, the drop in mood, the irritability that comes from nowhere, that urgent, almost desperate need for something sweet or something caffeinated to pull you back up. And most people assume this is just normal aging, that it is just how their body works now, that there is nothing they can do about it except manage it with more coffee and better willpower. It is not normal, it is not inevitable, and in the vast majority of cases, it is not something you are stuck with. What it is, in most cases, is a completely predictable biological reaction to the first meal of the day. A reaction that follows the same pattern, driven by the same mechanism in millions of people every morning. And once you understand what is driving it, you can change it. Not with supplements, not with extreme diets, not with anything complicated or expensive, just by understanding what is happening and making a few informed choices about what goes on your plate. So let us talk about what is actually happening inside your body. I want you to picture your bloodstream as a highway. Glucose, which is just the scientific name for blood sugar, is the traffic moving through that highway. When everything is working the way it should, that traffic moves steadily and consistently. Cars enter at a manageable pace, the highway stays clear, and everything flows. When your glucose is stable like this, you feel it. You have energy that lasts. You think clearly. Your mood is even. Your body is doing exactly what it was designed to do. But now imagine what happens when you eat foods that break down into glucose very quickly. Foods like white bread, most commercial breakfast cereals, instant oatmeal, fruit juice, flavored yogurt. Bagels, muffins, many granola bars, and even some foods marketed specifically as healthy breakfast options. These foods contain carbohydrates that your digestive system can convert into glucose extraordinarily fast, faster than your body was designed to handle comfortably on a regular basis. When you eat these foods, it is like suddenly releasing hundreds of cars onto that highway all at the same time, with no warning and no coordination. Traffic surges. The highway becomes overwhelmed. Your body reacts immediately. It releases a hormone called insulin. Think of insulin as the emergency traffic management system. Its entire job is to respond to that surge to clear the highway by moving glucose out of the bloodstream and directing it into your cells where it can be stored or used as energy. Now, insulin is not a bad thing, it is an essential hormone. Your body absolutely needs it. The problem arises when the glucose surge is so large, so sudden, and so frequent that the system is being repeatedly forced into emergency mode. Because here is what happens: when the traffic surge is very large, insulin does not respond gently and gradually. It responds aggressively to clear the road as fast as possible. And it does its job effectively, but it often overshoots. The highway clears faster than it should, and blood sugar drops lower than it should. That drop, that sudden emptying of the highway after the surge, is what you feel as the mid morning crash. Energy rises sharply, then it falls sharply. And your body, sensing the drop in blood sugar, sends urgent signals that feel like hunger, fatigue, difficulty concentrating, and the craving for something sweet that will bring blood sugar back up quickly. And if you respond to those cravings with more fast digesting carbohydrates, which most people do because that is what the body is asking for, you begin the cycle again. Spike, crash, spike, crash, repeated every few hours throughout the day. Over days and weeks, this pattern is uncomfortable and draining. But over months and years, it becomes something more concerning. Let me explain why. Every time blood sugar spikes sharply, insulin has to work harder. And every time insulin works harder, your cells are being exposed to high levels of it repeatedly over time. Eventually, a process begins where your cells start becoming less responsive to insulin signals. They stop opening the door as readily when insulin knocks. Your pancreas has to produce more and more insulin just to achieve the same effect. This is called insulin resistance. And it is not a sudden diagnosis. It is a gradual shift that happens quietly over years, often with no obvious symptoms until it has progressed significantly. Insulin resistance is directly associated with weight gain, particularly around the abdomen. It is associated with elevated cholesterol levels, high blood pressure, low energy, cognitive difficulties, and a significantly increased risk of developing type 2 diabetes. According to data from the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, more than 1 in 3 American adults currently has prediabetes, which is essentially early stage insulin resistance. And the majority of those people do not know it. This is not meant to frighten you, it is meant to show you how genuinely important the patterns we establish around food, and especially the first meal of the day, actually are for long term health. The good news, and there is very significant good news here, is that insulin resistance is not permanent. The body's metabolic system is far more adaptable and responsive than most people realize. With consistent changes in diet and lifestyle, the trajectory of insulin resistance can be slowed, stopped, and in many cases, meaningfully reversed. And breakfast, specifically the composition of breakfast, is one of the most powerful levers we have for influencing blood sugar patterns throughout the entire day. Now, before we get into the strategies, let me share some of the research that underpins all of this. A major long term study from Harvard's T.H. Chan School of Public Health tracked tens of thousands of adults over multiple years and looked at the relationship between dietary patterns and metabolic health. The researchers found, consistently across different populations and different follow up periods, that diets dominated by high glycemic carbohydrates meaning foods that raise blood sugar quickly were strongly associated with higher rates of insulin resistance, type 2 diabetes, and cardiovascular disease. Importantly, this association held true even when accounting for overall calorie intake. It was not simply about eating too much, it was about the type of carbohydrates, specifically how fast they converted to glucose and how aggressively they triggered insulin release. Separate controlled nutrition trials, where researchers actually measured blood sugar responses in real time using continuous glucose monitors, have shown something equally striking. Two breakfasts containing the exact same number of calories can produce dramatically different glucose responses. A high protein, high fiber, moderate fat breakfast can produce a glucose curve that rises gently, peaks modestly, and returns to baseline gradually. A refined carbohydrate breakfast with the same calorie count can produce a spike 2 or 3 times as high, followed by an equally sharp drop. Same calories. Completely different effect on the body. Completely different effect on how you feel, how clearly you think, and how hungry you will be for the rest of the day. That research is what the 5 strategies I'm about to share with you are built on. And I want to say something before we get into them because I hear this concern often. What do you normally eat for breakfast? Oatmeal, eggs, cereal, toast, maybe nothing at all? I am genuinely curious. Let me know in the comments below because I read them, and it is always interesting to see how different morning routines affect people's energy and focus throughout the day. If you have noticed a pattern in your own mornings, whether good or bad, share it. You might help someone else recognize something they had not connected before. All right, let us get into the strategies. Strategy number 5, start your breakfast with protein. This one is perhaps the simplest shift you can make, and it is also one of the most consistently supported by research. Before anything else you eat in the morning, make sure there is protein on your plate. Now, most people know that protein is important for building muscle. But from a metabolic standpoint, protein does something much more immediately useful. It slows digestion. Specifically, it slows the rate at which carbohydrates are broken down and absorbed. When protein is present during digestion, it triggers a cascade of hormonal signals that tell the stomach to slow down, that tell the digestive system to take its time, and that help regulate how quickly glucose enters the bloodstream from whatever other foods you ate alongside it. The result is a flatter, more gradual glucose curve after the meal. But there is something else protein does that most people have never heard about. It stimulates the release of a hormone called glucagon like peptide 1, often shortened to GLP-1. This hormone is so significant that pharmaceutical companies have built entire classes of diabetes and weight loss medications around mimicking its effects. When protein triggers the natural release of GLP-1 in your gut, it signals to the pancreas to release insulin more carefully, it slows the pace of digestion, and it communicates directly with the hunger centers of the brain to reduce appetite. This is why a high protein breakfast can suppress hunger for 3 to 4 hours in a way that a carbohydrate based breakfast simply cannot match. Foods that provide a meaningful protein contribution at breakfast include eggs, which are one of the most nutrient dense and versatile options available. Plain Greek yogurt, which is significantly higher in protein than regular yogurt. Cottage cheese, which many people forget about, but which is an excellent and affordable source. Tofu or tempeh for those who prefer plant based options. Nuts and nut butters, though these are better combined with other protein sources since they are also high in fat. And legumes like lentils and beans, which some cultures have eaten for breakfast for centuries and which are now being studied specifically for their benefits in blood sugar management. A controlled nutrition trial published in the Journal of the American Diabetes Association found that participants who ate higher protein breakfasts compared to matched lower protein breakfasts with the same total calories experienced reduced blood sugar spikes, lower insulin responses, decreased mid-morning cravings, and reported feeling significantly more satisfied and focused throughout the morning. One important mistake to avoid: Many people add protein to their breakfast but still pair it with large amounts of refined carbohydrates. A protein shake alongside a bagel or white toast, eggs alongside a glass of orange juice and a bowl of cereal. The protein is doing its job. But the volume of rapidly digesting carbohydrates alongside it can still produce a significant glucose rise that partially or completely cancels out the stabilizing effect of the protein. The key is balance, not just addition. Strategy number 4, include healthy fats in your breakfast. For many people, this one feels counterintuitive, and I understand why. For decades, dietary fat was positioned as the enemy. Low fat diets were promoted as the path to better health and a healthier weight. Most of us grew up with that message, and it is hard to let go of. But the research on dietary fat and blood sugar tells a fundamentally different story. Healthy fats, the kinds found in whole, minimally processed foods, do something specific and very valuable during digestion. They slow what is called gastric emptying. All that means is that food moves through your stomach and into your small intestine more slowly. When food moves through more slowly, everything that follows is more gradual. Carbohydrates are broken down more slowly. Glucose enters the bloodstream more slowly. The insulin response is smaller and more proportionate. And the overall arc of your blood sugar after eating is flatter and more stable. There is also a fascinating finding from recent research on olive oil specifically. Extra virgin olive oil contains a compound called oleocanthal, which has been shown in studies to have properties that reduce inflammation in the same biological pathways that are disrupted in metabolic disease. Chronic low-grade inflammation is now understood to be one of the key drivers of insulin resistance over time. So olive oil is not just slowing gastric emptying. It may be actively supporting the cellular environment that allows insulin to do its job properly. Using olive oil to cook your eggs in the morning is not just about flavor or tradition. There is a genuine metabolic case for it. The foods that provide these beneficial fats include avocado, which has become widely available and is an easy addition to eggs or toast. Extra virgin olive oil, which can be used for cooking or drizzled directly over food. Nuts, including almonds, walnuts, pecans, and cashews. Seeds, including pumpkin seeds, sunflower seeds, hemp seeds, and sesame seeds. And fatty fish like salmon, which some people incorporate into breakfast in various cuisines around the world. Many people are genuinely surprised when they learn that adding fat to their breakfast, adding avocado to their eggs, or nut butter to their yogurt can actually reduce the blood sugar impact of the meal. The research supports this clearly. The fat is not the problem. In the context of a balanced breakfast, it is part of the solution. The important caveat here is quality. Highly processed fats, the kinds found in packaged breakfast foods, fast food, and commercial baked goods, do not produce the same stabilizing effect. In fact, these fats, particularly industrial trans fats and heavily refined vegetable oils, have their own separate health concerns. The fats that benefit blood sugar management are the ones closest to their natural form. Simple rule: if the fat comes from a whole food, it is almost certainly working in your favor. Strategy number 3, add fiber that forms a barrier. Most people associate fiber with digestive health, and that connection is absolutely real. But there is a specific mechanism by which certain types of fiber directly and powerfully influence blood sugar, and most people have never heard about it. There is a category of fiber called viscous or soluble fiber. Unlike insoluble fiber, which moves through the digestive system largely intact, viscous fiber dissolves in water and forms a thick, gel-like substance inside the intestinal tract. This gel physically coats the intestinal walls and creates a barrier that slows the absorption of carbohydrates into the bloodstream. Think of it like a controlled release system. Instead of glucose flooding in all at once, it seeps through the fiber gel gradually and steadily. The peak is lower, the curve is longer, and the body has time to manage it without the emergency insulin response. What is also remarkable about this gel forming fiber is what it does for the community of bacteria living in your gut. Research in the last decade has revealed that the health of your gut microbiome, the trillions of microorganisms living in your digestive tract, has a surprisingly direct influence on blood sugar regulation. When gut bacteria are fed viscous fiber, they produce compounds called short chain fatty acids. These compounds improve the sensitivity of cells to insulin, help regulate the release of hunger hormones, and reduce the inflammation that underpins metabolic disease. A breakfast high in viscous fiber is not just managing your glucose curve for that morning. It is feeding a microbial community that helps manage blood sugar across every meal throughout the day. Foods that are particularly rich in viscous fiber include chia seeds, which form that characteristic gel texture when added to liquid, and which are now one of the most studied foods in metabolic nutrition research. Ground flax seeds, which have the added benefit of containing plant based omega 3 fatty acids. Psyllium husk, which is less common as a breakfast food, but can be mixed into smoothies or water. And oats, specifically steel cut oats and old fashioned rolled oats, which contain a viscous fiber called beta glucan that has been studied extensively for its effects on cholesterol and blood sugar. A quick note on oats because this comes up often. Instant oatmeal, the kind that comes in individual packets and cooks in 2 minutes, has been processed in a way that significantly reduces its fiber content and dramatically increases the speed at which it digests. Steel cut oats and old fashioned rolled oats are meaningfully different. They take longer to cook, but they also take longer to digest, producing a much more gradual glucose response. If oatmeal is a staple of your breakfast, this single swap can make a substantial difference. For practical application, adding 1 to 2 tablespoons of chia seeds or ground flax seeds to your morning yogurt, smoothie, or oatmeal requires almost no effort and can meaningfully change the glycemic impact of the entire meal. Chia pudding made the night before using unsweetened almond milk or coconut milk with chia seeds, berries, and a source of protein is one of the best examples of a breakfast that checks multiple boxes simultaneously. Now we are moving into the two strategies where people most consistently report noticeable, sometimes dramatic differences in how they feel within just a few days of making the change. Strategy number two, choose your fruit strategically. Let me say this clearly first because I do not want anyone to take the wrong message. Fruit is not bad for you. Whole fruit, eaten as part of a balanced diet, contains vitamins, minerals, antioxidants, and fiber that support health in numerous ways. The research on fruit consumption and overall health is generally positive, but there is a wide spectrum of how different fruits affect blood sugar, and most people have never been given a framework for thinking about it. On one end of the spectrum, you have fruit juice, even fresh squeezed, 100% natural, no sugar added fruit juice. When you juice a fruit, you remove most of the fiber. What remains is the natural sugar in concentrated liquid form. Without the fiber, that sugar absorbs into the bloodstream almost as rapidly as soda. The body registers it as a fast glucose hit, not as the food it came from. A large glass of orange juice first thing in the morning can produce a blood sugar spike that rivals some candy bars. On the other end of the spectrum, you have berries, blueberries, strawberries, raspberries, blackberries. These fruits are unique among common breakfast options. They are relatively low in total sugar, they are high in fiber, and they contain a remarkable class of plant compounds called polyphenols, specifically anthocyanins, which are the pigments responsible for their deep colors. These polyphenols are not just antioxidants, though they are that too. Research has shown that they directly influence how efficiently cells respond to insulin. Multiple studies have found that regular berry consumption improves insulin sensitivity, reduces post meal blood sugar spikes, and lowers markers of inflammation that are associated with metabolic disease. There is also an important principle in nutrition called the order in which you eat foods within a meal. Research published in the journal Diabetes Care found that eating vegetables and protein before carbohydrates, even when the total meal is identical, produces a significantly lower blood sugar response than eating carbohydrates first. The same concept applies to breakfast. If you are having oatmeal and eggs, eating the eggs first and the oatmeal second produces a flatter glucose response than the reverse. This is a zero cost, zero effort adjustment that changes the metabolic impact of the same meal without changing a single ingredient. The practical implication for fruit is the same. If you are eating berries alongside something starchy, eat the berries first. The fiber and polyphenols in the berries begin working in the digestive system before the starch arrives, creating a more favorable environment for glucose absorption. The practical implication for fruit choice is simple. If you currently drink fruit juice in the morning, replacing it with a cup of whole berries immediately changes your metabolic response to breakfast. If you currently eat high sugar fruits like bananas, mangoes, or grapes as a significant part of your breakfast, swapping part of that for berries reduces the glucose impact. The total amount of fruit does not have to change, just the composition of which fruits you choose. Bananas are not villains. Mangoes are not harmful. But their glycemic impact, particularly eaten alone or with other fast digesting foods first thing in the morning, is higher. As a smaller part of a balanced breakfast rather than the centerpiece, they are much less of an issue. I want to take a moment here before we get to the number one strategy because it is worth pausing to appreciate what happens in the body when all of these strategies work together. When you eat a breakfast built around protein, healthy fat, viscous fiber, and low glycemic fruit, the combined effect is significantly greater than any single component would produce on its own. They are working in parallel. Protein slows digestion and triggers appetite suppressing hormones. Fat slows how quickly food leaves the stomach. Fiber creates a physical barrier that filters glucose into the bloodstream gradually and feeds the gut bacteria that further support insulin function. And the lower sugar load from berries means there is simply less glucose entering the system to begin with. The result is a blood sugar curve that looks completely different from what most people experience. A gentle rise, a modest peak, a slow, steady return to baseline. Not a spike and crash, just sustained, predictable energy. People who experience this for the first time often describe a kind of quiet surprise. They realize they made it to noon without thinking about food, without the urgent coffee run, without the irritability or the brain fog. That is what metabolically stable mornings feel like. And most people have not felt it in years. One question I hear often is about skipping breakfast entirely. Intermittent fasting has become popular, and some people wonder whether avoiding breakfast is better for blood sugar than eating it. The honest answer is that it depends on the person. Research on time restricted eating does show real metabolic benefits for some individuals, particularly when the eating window is earlier in the day. But not everyone thrives on skipping breakfast. People who experience significant blood sugar drops when they go long without eating may feel considerably worse on a fasting approach, not better. The most important point is this: the quality of what you eat when you do eat still matters as much as timing. Someone who skips breakfast and then eats a refined carbohydrate lunch does not capture the metabolic benefits of fasting. Someone who eats a well composed protein fat fiber breakfast is making a sound choice. Both approaches can work. Neither works if the food quality is poor. If skipping breakfast genuinely suits you and you feel stable and energized doing it, that choice has research behind it. If you feel better eating in the morning, focus on composition. That is the variable with the most evidence behind it. And now, the number one breakfast pattern that metabolic researchers consistently identify as the most effective for blood sugar stability throughout the morning. It is a protein, fat, and fiber combination meal. All three elements present together from real whole foods. Let me give you specific examples so this stays practical. 2 or 3 eggs cooked in olive oil with a handful of leafy greens and half an avocado. Substantial protein, healthy fat, fiber, and almost no fast digesting carbohydrates. Blood sugar response is minimal and gentle. plain full-fat Greek yogurt, about 1 cup topped with chia seeds, a handful of walnuts, and a cup of mixed berries. Protein from the yogurt, fat and fiber from the nuts and chia, and polyphenol-rich fruit. Simple, no cooking required. Steel cut oats with ground flaxseed, a spoonful of almond butter, and sliced strawberries. The steel cut oats digest far more slowly than instant oats. The nut butter adds protein and fat. The flaxseed adds fiber. The berries contribute polyphenols without a large glycemic load. None of these breakfasts require special ingredients or complicated preparation. They use foods available in any grocery store at reasonable prices. The shift is not about buying anything exotic. It is about combining what you already eat in a way that serves your metabolic system instead of overwhelming it. What all these meals share is the absence of refined carbohydrates as the centerpiece. White bread is not the base, instant cereal is not present, fruit juice is not there. Instead, these meals are built around foods that work together to flatten the glucose curve. And flattening that curve consistently over days and weeks and months genuinely changes the long-term trajectory of how your body manages blood sugar. One more thing worth knowing, and most discussions on breakfast leave this out entirely. When you eat matters, not just what you eat. Your body's glucose management system operates on an internal clock that influences how efficiently it handles food throughout the day. In the morning, particularly in the first few hours after waking, insulin sensitivity tends to be at its daily peak. The same meal eaten at 7 in the morning will produce a lower, more manageable blood sugar response than that same meal eaten late at night. Eating within 1 to 2 hours of waking, when your lifestyle allows it, gives your body the best conditions to manage breakfast well. There is also an often overlooked connection between sleep quality and blood sugar. Multiple studies have shown that even a single night of significantly poor sleep, fewer than 6 hours, can reduce the body's ability to manage blood sugar the following day noticeably. Repeated nights of poor sleep compound this significantly. If you have been making the right dietary choices but still struggling with energy crashes, your sleep deserves serious attention. It may be the single most impactful area you can address outside of diet. There is one more piece of the picture I want to share before the practical challenge, because it comes up constantly and most people find it genuinely eye-opening. Muscle mass and blood sugar are connected in a way that surprises almost everyone. Your skeletal muscle, the muscle in your arms, legs, and core, is actually the largest consumer of glucose in the entire body. When you use your muscles, they absorb glucose directly from the bloodstream without needing insulin to do it. This means that people with more muscle mass have a significantly larger capacity to manage blood sugar, simply because they have more tissue actively pulling glucose out of circulation. This has two important implications for your morning. First, even a short walk after breakfast, 10 to 15 minutes of gentle movement, can meaningfully reduce the blood sugar response to that meal. The muscles activated by walking begin absorbing glucose independently of insulin, which flattens the spike before it can fully develop. A short walk after breakfast is one of the simplest and most well-supported blood sugar management tools in the research, and almost nobody talks about it in the context of morning habits. Second, it means that building and maintaining muscle mass through regular physical activity, even light resistance training a few times a week, improves your body's capacity to manage blood sugar around the clock, not just during exercise. This is a long-term investment. The muscle you build this year improves your metabolic resilience next year and the year after that. Now, before I give you your practical challenge for the next 7 days, I want to take a moment to address something that comes up in almost every conversation I have with patients who are changing their eating patterns. The first few days can feel different, sometimes uncomfortable in unexpected ways. If your body has been accustomed to receiving a fast glucose surge at breakfast for years, removing that surge does not feel neutral at first. Your hunger signals, your energy expectations, and your cravings have all adapted to expect that morning spike. When you replace a refined carbohydrate breakfast with a protein, fat, fiber meal, your body will likely send signals that something is missing. You might feel less immediate energy in the first 30 to 60 minutes after eating,